The ISIS-K terrorist who directed the August 2021 suicide bombing that killed 13 U.S. service members during the Biden administration's botched withdrawal from Afghanistan. That ISIS-K terrorist has been killed by the Taliban, according to a senior administration official telling that to Fox News Digital. The official told Fox News Digital that the Biden administration has, quote, recently become aware that the ISIS-K operative behind the suicide bombing at the Abbey gate, there at the airport in Kabul, quote, has been killed in a Taliban operation. All right, let's join now with this conversation national security expert Hal Kempfer, who is joining me via Zoom. Hal, good to see you. This news broke about a couple of hours ago. We wanted to bring you on to talk about this. Help me understand this. The U.S. was in Afghanistan for 20 years. In the summer of 2021, the U.S. pulled out all forces. The Taliban took over the country. The Afghan leader, Ghani, fled the country, and now the Taliban rules the country to this day. But during the chaotic withdrawal, so many Afghan civilians, so many Afghan allies of ours, troops on the ground, 13 of which who were killed in that terrorist attack by an ISIS bomber, the Taliban killing the ISIS bomber. How does that work out here in this calculation? This is difficult.
Andrew, when we look at Afghanistan, we see the Taliban, and we see in their shadow Al-Qaeda, who they've never renounced. They were obviously giving shelter to al-Zawahiri when we took him out with a drone a while back. He'd actually moved back into Kabul proper. But with that, since 2015, there has been an ongoing fight with ISIS-K. Interestingly, while we were also fighting the Taliban and also fighting Al-Qaeda, we were fighting ISIS-K. We were actually fighting both, although ISIS-K and the Taliban do not get along. This is a splinter faction of the Taliban. It's a splinter faction of the Taliban of Pakistan, and it also has warm relations with the Haqqani network, which is a very radical network, somewhat associated with the Taliban, but also maintains somewhat, I don't know, cordial ties, if you will, with ISIS-K. And what they are is they're ISIS. They're the Islamic State group, although they call themselves Islamic State of the Khorasan province. They are uniquely South Asian.
Okay.
And they want to take over. They want to kick the Taliban out of power.
Yeah. Well, this goes to show, according to the article here from Fox News Digital, this goes to show you the lack thereof of any communications or really diplomatic ties with the Taliban and the United States. The official there, speaking on the condition of anonymity, said the United States was not notified of the operation by the Taliban, but rather learned of the operation and its result through U.S. intelligence streams. Also, the official could not disclose the name of the individual. And Fox News Digital, remember, had previously reported that the suicide bomber had been a prisoner released from Bagram Air Base August the 15th of 2021, about 15 days before this bombing took place, after the Taliban seized control of the facility and the airport. So this is all working in tandem. And how we have to remind the viewers that Pentagon officials at the Defense Department, they went after someone incorrectly who they thought carried this out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that turned out to be a horrible mistake, as you recall. It's not surprising. We wouldn't know about the operational details unless we picked up on it from intelligence sources. There's no reason the Taliban would communicate that or let us know what they're doing. They're involved in all sorts of operations against ISIS over there. It's just part of what they do on a daily basis. And it's not surprising that we'd find out about this, as it turns out, weeks after it took place. On the other hand, you're also talking about the Taliban. I don't think their forensic identification system is necessarily all that advanced. So it may have taken them a while to realize who they had taken out when they took this person out. What's kind of a sad note is, like the founder of ISIS or the Islamic State to begin with, al-Baghdadi, he too had been in one of our prisons. And in this case, this individual had been in the prison at Bagram Air Force Base It does say something that we managed to pick up on some of these. We picked up on a lot of these radicals, and kept them out of circulation, and then somehow they got back into circulation and became these tremendous threats to U.S. forces. That's not the first time that's happened. So, it's a lesson learned from that, but also it's good to hear that they took them out. But it was interesting. There was some streams this week earlier talking about that the Taliban and the U.S. share common interests in eliminating ISIS-K.
Okay.
And it kind of alluded that there might be some level of communication or cooperation, although they've been very clear on all the streams today, any discussion, which is we did not share information or intelligence with the Taliban. But there is a common goal, and I'm kind of wondering where that's going to go in the future, particularly if ISIS poses a greater risk to U.S. interests around the world.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about U.S.-Taliban relations, as well. I mean, I don't want to give them too much credit here, but is the Biden administration looking at this? Is the Taliban looking at this to potentially get back in the good graces of the U.S. government after they took over the country there? Do you think that's happening kind of behind the scenes, or at least that's some of their motives possibly?
If there's anything like that, it is well behind the scenes. I will tell you that they're keeping that very quiet. Although I will tell you, in the world of statecraft, strange bedfellows when you share a common cause. And so I don't know if there's anything going on. I'm absolutely sure they won't talk about it. But there might be some cases I could see where if we identify a particular threat, like an ISIS cell or something that we need taken out, and if the Taliban are in a position to do something, who knows what could happen in the future? Yeah. I just don't know, and I've seen some unusual, for very specific purposes, some unusual connections just to achieve a common objective.
Yeah, because Hal, I was also reminded too that essentially this suicide bombing took the lives of 13 U.S. service members, 11 Marines, 1 Navy sailor, 1 Army soldier. You were on the air with me when that was all occurring and the fallout from that. But remember how, in the wake of the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan, the concern was that Afghanistan would yet again, like in the years before 9/11, become a breeding ground, a safe haven for terrorist cells like ISIS-K. Is that happening as we speak? We just got this after-action report about the Afghanistan withdrawal. Members of Congress are calling for its, full release to the public. But are you concerned that Afghanistan is yet again getting into that territory?
From everything I've seen, yes. And the Taliban made a number of promises as part of the agreement where the U.S. withdrew. They have basically systematically backtracked on everything they promised to do. But one of the things that they have allowed is a breeding ground for these radical groups, whether it's Al-Qaeda or ISIS-K, to do things. And of course, earlier this week, there was some discussion that that maybe it's a place where they're planning on launching specific attacks in Europe and elsewhere to take advantage of things. So this has become a breeding ground. It's become, in many ways, it's becoming very much like what it was prior to 9/11, and that's a huge concern. The other problem is you can't erase the last 20 years. Things have changed. We used some of the former Soviet states as basing points in our operations and going into Afghanistan. We used Pakistan extensively going in and out of Afghanistan. Yeah. The politics have changed. Yeah. So our ability to leverage those countries has changed as well. And so whatever we do in the future, it's not going to be, as the famous Roman saying, not like yesterday. Mm.
All right, Hal Kempfer, we'll leave it at that. We always appreciate your insight into these major international headlines, and we'll talk again. Thanks so much, Hal.
Okay, thank you, Andrew.